Welcome to our tip number 12, and what we're going to be doing is amazing in this tutorial. We're going to be checking out how to build multiple ARIMA models using this concept called nesting. It's a Tidyverse must-know feature, and this is what we're going to be building today, an interactive map where we've got 7 different time series and we got 7 different forecasts that are all made by different ARIMA models. So we're going to be doing iteration, nesting, and unnesting. We're also going to be focusing on the map and my package Modeltime and how you can make ARIMA models and multiple ARIMA models with it. Before you get started, the first thing that you need to do is you need to sign up for the RTips newsletter, and that'll get you access to the GitHub repo. That'll get you access to all of the files that you need to be able to complete this tutorial. You'll want to, once you get it set up, you'll go to your Git pane in your RStudio. You'll click the pull button, and that'll pull down the latest files. If you go into your Files tab, you'll have this O12 Nest ARIMA. We're going to click on that, and then in here is the .r file. That is what this file is right here. So definitely sign up. You'll get access to the GitHub repo and all of the files that you need. All right, first thing that we're going to be doing, we're going to be loading 4 libraries, and that's it. We're going to be loading the library called Modeltime, Tidy Models, TimeTK, and the Tidyverse library. So once you have those loaded, we're ready to check out some data. Now we're going to be doing a little bit of time series visualization, which is covered in module 2 of the DS4B 203 time series course. So if you really want to get into time series, I strongly recommend it's the best course out there for time series. First, we're going to check out our data. So we've got this data file called weekly sales, Walmart sales weekly. And what this is it's a table that contains 1,000 rows by 17 columns. And this is a grouped time series. So you've got an ID feature in here that indicates each of the different time series groups. You have several features in here, which are regressors. We're mainly going to be focusing on the date, which is the timestamp column, and then the weekly sales column, which is going to be our target. So we're going to be focusing on those here. To get a better sense, it's often better to visualize the data, and we're going to use this function called plot time series. So we're first going to group the data by our ID, which is our 7 different time series groups. We're then going to use the plot time series to plot the date versus the weekly sales. And I have .facet columns 2 in here to give me 2 columns. So now I can get a sense of my data, and it looks something like this, where 1-1 is one of the departments in this Walmart sales forecasting time series. 1-3 is the next department, and so on. Okay, and we can see that the sales are a little bit different, and this is what we want to forecast. So next what we're going to do is we're going to move on to nesting. And we need to know a little bit of background first about what nesting does and unnesting. So this is part of nesting and iteration. This is covered in week 5 of my DS4B 101-R, R for Business course. So I strongly recommend, if you want to learn the foundations of data science, check out DS4B 101-R. It is the most important course that I teach because it teaches you all of the foundations that I'm going to cover here. So let's talk about nesting. We've got this Walmart sales weekly data set, and we know that it's got 7 different columns. What we can do is first select down just the columns that we need for this tutorial, which is going to be the ID, date, and weekly sales. And then what I can do is I can use this function called nest. And what this is going to do is going to create a column in here called nested column, and it's taking everything except for the ID column and nesting it. So let's just run this real quick, and I'll show you what it does. So now we went from 1,000 by 3 to what's called a nested data frame, where you can see it's 7 by 2. So 1 row for each of these time series groups, and then inside of this nested column, we now have 143 by 2 for each of these different time series. So what is that 143 by 2? Well, it's another tibble that contains all 143 of these different rows in here and the weekly sales. So if you save this as data nested, and if I wanted to check out that data nested now, I've got that 7 by 2, and if I go into my if I go into my nested column, which looks something like this, and this unwraps it when I do this $ nested column, it pulls out the contents. So it's actually a list of 7 different tables here, and I can tell it's a list because it's got these double brackets 1, double brackets 2. So you can see what's nested inside of this column is that weekly sales data. So what can we do? Well, the other concept that we need to know first before we move on to like what we can do with this nested column is we need to talk about unnesting. It's easy to get our data back. All we do is we take our data nested, which looks like this, and then we use the unnest column on whatever column that we've nested our data. So when we do this, it unwraps it and we get our 1000 by 3 back. So what we did was we first started with 1000 by 3. We then nested it to create a 7 by 2, one for each of these groups, and then nested the data inside of our data frame, and then we unnested. So once you get that concept, we can then move on to doing some really cool stuff with these nested columns. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to create multiple ARIMA forecasts. So one ARIMA forecast for each of these different models. This is going to be focusing on a couple other concepts. Now we're going to be moving into my Modeltime R package, which is insane for time series analysis. We're going to be focusing just on the ARIMA algorithm, but I also teach a lot more than just ARIMA. I teach many machine learning algorithms like XGBoost, random forest, linear regression, and more. And I teach these all in my time series course, my DS4B 203-R time series course. So if you're really interested in going deeper with time series and model time specifically, definitely check out that course. ARIMA specifically is covered in Module 8. We're also going to be going deeper into nesting, functions, and iteration. These are all covered in week 5 of my DS4B 101-R, which is my foundational R for Business course. Okay, cool. Now what we want to do is we want to see what we can do with this data nested. And first, what we're going to do is we're going to fit some ARIMA models. So let me just kind of step down through what I'm doing here. I'm going to space this out a little bit so you can see kind of the main concepts here. So what I'm going to be doing is taking my data nested, and then I'm going to use this mutate function to add a new column. Now that new column is going to be called fitted model, and inside of each of the rows for this fitted model column that I'm going to create, I'm going to take this nested column and I'm going to pass it to a function. Now this function is what we call an anonymous function. It doesn't have a name. I've actually created it right here, and it's just a blank function that has a body function. It's going to take in df, and each of these dfs is going to be one of these tables, 143 by 2, and what it's going to do is going to model it. So the modeling function I'm going to be using is this, it's called ARIMA reg. I'm going to be passing a seasonal period of 52 because this is a weekly time series, and I know that every 52 observations is going to be pretty important for a seasonality. And then I'm going to set the engine to auto ARIMA. Auto ARIMA comes from the forecast package, and it's going to automate the ARIMA modeling process for us, so we don't have to do a whole lot of hand calculations, and it's a relatively good for scaling up. Then we're going to pass that to the fit, and we're going to fit our ARIMA model. Our target is going to be the weekly sales. So remember, we got weekly sales here as a function of date, and that date feature is required for model time to do its thing. And then the data that we're passing it is df. So this is going to create an ARIMA model for each one of these nested tables that we have in here. Okay, so let me run this now. Control Enter. It's going to take a second to run because it's actually iterating through each one of these series, and it's producing a fitted model that's specific to that time series. So we've now created 7 different fitted models, and you can see we've added a new column here called fitted model, and each of these fitted models contains a fit object, and what that is our ARIMA model. Cool. So now that we have an ARIMA model in hand, we can do the same process over again by then taking our fitted model and our nested column of data and forecasting it forward. So we're going to, this is doing a little bit of model time. So inside of this, basically what we're going to do is map the forecast. So we're going to create a new column using the mutate function. That new column is going to be called nested forecast. And we're going to use this function called map2 now, where we take our fitted model and our nested column and we pass it to another anonymous function where we're going to have our ARIMA model. So ARIMA model is going to get passed into this function, and that's going to be what this first column is. Fitted model is going to then go right in here. And then wherever you see ARIMA model in my function, this fitted model, which is this fit object here, is going to get passed in. And then our DF is going to be this nested column. So that's in the second position is nested column. That's going to get dropped right in here. So each one of these nested columns are going to get added right in here when I do my model time forecast. So internal to the function, what is happening under the hood, we're creating a model time table with the fit object, and that's needed for model time. I cover this in my time series course. And then we pipe that into the model time forecast function with h equal to 52. So that's our horizon. We're going to forecast the next 52 periods. And then we also want to keep the actual data. So we want to keep this in for comparison purposes. So when I run this now, if I run all of these, hit Control and Enter, again, it takes a second to run because it's got to iterate through each one of the ARIMA models. And we get that nested forecast. And now it's 195 by 5. So it's 143 plus an extra 52. So I'm going to save this as model table. I'm going to run this whole thing here, and we're going to save this as model table. Once it's done, we now have our model table saved. It's got our ID, our nested column with the original data, our fitted models for each of these that was fitted to each of these data sets, and then the nested forecast. Now I'm going to just select the columns I need, which is going to be ID and nested forecast. So Control Enter, I now have ID and nested forecast. This is a tibble of 195 by 5. I'm going to use my unnest function. And now I have 1365 by 6. This looks a little weird, but this is the output that you get from model time forecast. And these column names are set up for this plot model time forecast. Because this is a grouped data set, we need to then group by ID. Now we've got our 7 groups in here, and you can see that with groups ID 7. And then we just pipe that into the model time forecast function to plot. And we now have our visualization. So we've got all 7 of our different forecasts with the ARIMA models. And you can see the ARIMA models that are listed right here. If you like this video, don't forget to sign up for the Tuesday Free R Tips newsletter. You can just click this link here and it'll send you here. Put your email address in, and every Tuesday you'll get these videos, you'll get the code, and you'll get the tutorial right in your inbox.